Smoke still drifted across the ruins of Troy when a new and silent terror began to spread through the palaces and cities of the Mycenaean world. What had seemed to be the golden age of Greek civilization in the Bronze Age suddenly became a landscape of abandonment, violence, and disappearance. What happened to the empire of the Golden Warriors, with their fortified palaces, cyclopean walls, and sacred rituals? Why, in just a few generations, did the Mycenaeans become only a shadow, a fading echo in the memory of Mediterranean peoples? This is the mystery that has haunted archaeologists, historians, and lovers of ancient legends for centuries. The answers are not only in books, but in the broken stones of Mycenae, the looted tombs of Pylos, the fragments of burned tablets from Thebes, and the stories whispered across generations until they became myth. At the height of their power, just before the fall of Troy, the Mycenaeans dominated vast territories. From the Aegean Islands to the plains of Thessaly, from the mountains of Attica to the fortified harbors of the Peloponnese. Palace cities like Mycenae, Tiryns, and Pylos were centers of wealth, religion, and military power. In their throne rooms, kings wore golden masks, commanded disciplined armies, and controlled vast trade networks that crossed seas and continents, trading olive oil, wine, weapons, and fine ceramics for northern amber, tin from Britain, ivory from Egypt, and even obsidian from distant lands. But behind the cyclopean walls and the glory of royal tombs, the Mycenaean world was fragile. Its wealth depended on unstable trade routes, volatile alliances, and above all, peace among kingdoms that were often rivals. There was always the threat of pirates, invaders, and unknown peoples lurking beyond the horizon. Even so, for centuries, Mycenae and its allies prospered, until suddenly, everything changed. The Mycenaean collapse was brutal and swift. Between 1200 and 1100 BC, almost all the great palace cities were destroyed or abandoned. Mycenae was set ablaze, its walls cracked by heat and violence. Pylos was sacked twice, with desperate battles recorded hastily on clay tablets. Tiryns, Thebes, Medea, GLA, all fell or were forgotten. In just a few years, the Greek landscape was transformed into ruins and silence. But what caused such catastrophe? The answer remains shrouded in mystery and fuels some of the most fascinating and controversial theories of ancient history. Some point to invasion by foreign peoples, the so-called Sea Peoples, warriors from the west and north who devastated not only Greece, but also Egypt, Hutti, and Canaan, leaving a trail of destruction throughout the eastern Mediterranean. Others argue it was the result of internal crisis, civil wars, popular uprisings, famine, epidemics, and the collapse of trade routes after the destruction of Troy. Some believe it was worsened by sudden climate change, prolonged droughts, devastating earthquakes, and cold waves that made it impossible to feed large populations. What we know, thanks to archaeology, is that the Mycenaean disappearance was total. The palaces burned and were never rebuilt. The Linear B script, used by royal scribes, vanished and remained forgotten for centuries. The royal tombs were looted by unknown hands. Artistic production, which had reached impressive levels of sophistication, gave way to simple, utilitarian objects. Trade routes collapsed. The Greek world plunged into centuries of darkness, the so-called Greek Dark Age, when even the knowledge of writing was lost and the memory of ancient deeds survived only through the songs of bards and myths passed down orally. Yet there are subtle signs of continuity, of silent resistance. Not all inhabitants fled or died. In small villages, far from the old palaces, Mycenaean families maintained ancestral traditions, worshipped ancient gods, and passed down legends of heroes and monsters. Archaeological evidence shows that while the elites disappeared, common people survived, adapting, mixing with new migrant peoples, learning to live without kings or walls. It was in these villages in rural temples that the seeds of future Greek civilization were preserved, even when all seemed lost. The geography of Greece itself favored this fragmented survival. Rugged mountains, isolated valleys, and distant islands created pockets of resistance where dialects, rituals, and stories remained alive. When, centuries later, Greece re-emerged in the city-states of the classical era, many Mycenaean elements returned. Names of gods, agricultural techniques, warrior traditions, and even echoes in Homeric narratives. But in this dark interval, imagination flourished. Without written records, history became myth. The descendants of the survivors wondered, who built the gigantic walls of Mycenae and Tiryns? Who were the golden kings whose masks shone like the sun? Why did their gods seem so powerful and yet so distant? Thus were born the legends of the Cyclopes, giants said to have raised the impossible stones. The heroes became demigods: Perseus, Heracles, Ajax, Agamemnon. The burned palaces became portals to the underworld, and each forgotten tomb was seen as the dwelling of restless spirits. The missing Mycenaean gold fueled stories of cursed treasures and vanished civilizations. And above all, the memory of Troy, the enemy city, but also a mirror of Mycenaean greatness, survived as both warning and inspiration. Over time, these narratives merged with the traditions of new peoples who arrived in Greece after the collapse: Dorians, Ionians, Aeolians. They brought their own languages, weapons, and gods, but as they occupied the ruins of the old palaces, they absorbed and transformed. The Mycenaean legacy. From this fusion would emerge, centuries later, the Greece we know, land of philosophers, poets, tyrants, and democrats, but also heir to a dark and almost forgotten past. To understand how the Mycenaean world truly vanished, we must look at the clues left in the rubble. Recent archaeological discoveries have revealed shocking and intriguing details. In Pylos, for example, burned clay tablets were found, preserved by fire, describing a scenario of emergency. Lists of weapons distributed to soldiers, orders to fortify walls, pleas to the gods for protection against imminent attacks. In Mycenae, evidence of multiple fires suggests the city was attacked, abandoned, retaken, and destroyed again, perhaps by Greek rivals, perhaps by foreign invaders. In Tiryns, the fortifications show signs of hasty repairs and then total collapse. Beyond physical destruction, there are signs of collective trauma, skeletons hastily buried, signs of violence, famine, and epidemics. In some regions, the population simply disappears from the archaeological record for entire generations. Villages are abandoned, fields become barren, pottery production nearly ceases. The Greek Dark Age is a disturbing void, a black hole in history in which only flashes of continuity shine here and there. Yet, paradoxically, it is in this period of shadows that many of Greece's most powerful myths take their definitive form. With no kings to command, no palaces to protect, the people turn to ancestral stories, not just as entertainment, but as a way to maintain cohesion and make sense of chaos. The Aedo, wandering poets, traveled from village to village, recounting the deeds of Achilles, Odysseus, Perseus. Each village adapted the stories to its reality, creating local versions, new legends, new heroes. Myth became social glue, a bridge between past and future. In this context, alternative theories flourished. Some suggest that groups of Mycenaeans fled west, founding mysterious colonies on distant islands, perhaps even in Italy or further. Others speculate that the secret knowledge of the kings was hidden in underground chambers, waiting for the right time to be rediscovered. Some even believe that sacred artifacts, swords, masks, tablets of wisdom, were buried in secret places, protected by curses and riddles, ready to resurface when Greece was ready to be reborn. Modern archaeology, ever more advanced, tries to separate fact from fiction. High-tech excavations reveal tunnels, hidden caches, traces of obscure cults, and even signs of religious practices that defy traditional understanding. In some tombs, unknown symbols appear alongside classic Mycenaean icons, indicating syncretism, cultural fusion, or perhaps the presence of secret societies that kept the flame of the past alive. Some bold theories point to contacts with even older civilizations. Egyptians, Hittites, even peoples of the Caucasus and Anatolia, suggesting a network of cultural exchange far greater than previously thought. And the mystery deepens when we consider the disappearance of writing. How could such a sophisticated civilization simply forget its own script? Some scholars suggest that Linear B was restricted to the palace elite, and its end represented not just the fall of a political system, but the collapse of an entire way of thinking. Others argue that part of the knowledge was deliberately hidden, passed only orally among initiates, as a way to protect sacred secrets from invaders and the profane. What is certain is that, even plunged into darkness, the Mycenaean memory did not vanish. From time to time, kings and tyrants of archaic Greece claimed descent from the heroes of Mycenae, used weapons and insignia inspired by the ancients, and reenacted forgotten rituals in the same temples and tombs. The first Olympic Games, the cults of Zeus, Hera, Poseidon, all retain echoes of Mycenaean practices, reinterpreted for a new era. And above all, there is the Homeric epic. When, centuries later, alphabetic writing returned to Greece, the stories of Homer, the Iliad and the Odyssey, were already circulating throughout the Greek world. They would be recorded in writing, immortalizing not only the fall of Troy, but also the spirit of the Mycenaeans, their courage, their tragedy, their thirst for glory, and their ambiguous relationship with the gods. Every detail of these epics reflects the dilemma of a people who saw their civilization collapse, the search for meaning amid chaos, the nostalgia for a grand past, the fear of unknown forces governing destiny. Odysseus himself, wandering the sea, is a mirror of the post-collapse Greek world, lost, resilient, searching for a home that may never exist again. But the echoes of the Mycenaeans did not end with the Dark Age. In the centuries that followed, as cities like Athens, Sparta, and Corinth flourished, the Mycenaean legacy was reinterpreted, appropriated, and transformed. Ancient myths were used to legitimize new dynasties, justify wars, and inspire works of art and architecture. The past became a political tool, but also an inexhaustible source of mystery and fascination. And for every answer discovered by archaeologists, new questions arise. What really caused the collapse? What secrets still sleep beneath the burned stones of Mycenae and Pylos? Are there, in fact, artifacts or hidden knowledge waiting to be rediscovered? And to what extent did the heroes of legend truly exist? Or are they just shadows of a people who refuse to be forgotten? In the next chapter, we'll explore the most enigmatic theories, secret societies, curses of the gods, external influences, and recent archaeological clues that challenge everything we thought we knew about the end of the Mycenaeans. For in the world of ancient mysteries, every ruin, every fragment, every myth is a door to the unknown, and the true end of the Mycenaeans may be only the beginning of a new era of enigmas. As the centuries stretched onward, the ruins of Mycenaean palaces stood like haunted sentinels on Greek hillsides, silent witnesses to a vanished era. In the minds of those who lived in the shadow of these broken stones, the collapse of the Mycenaean world became both a warning and a riddle. The stories passed down among villagers and traveling poets grew ever more fantastic, their edges blurred by time, fear, and longing. In this twilight, the final mysteries of the Mycenaeans took root, some hidden in the earth, others in the imagination of generations. Among scholars and seekers, one theory has always held a magnetic power, that the end of Mycenae was not merely a tragedy, but an act of cosmic balance, the result of curses, secret societies, and divine retribution. The Greeks themselves believed their world was shaped by the will and the wrath of the gods. Was it coincidence that so many palaces burned at once? Or was it punishment for forgotten sins, for arrogance against the heavens, for the defilement of sacred places during war? Even today, some archaeologists, when standing in the charred ruins of palatial halls, feel a chill not explained by science alone. Legends tell of hidden brotherhoods, keepers of forbidden rites and knowledge, who survived the fall by vanishing into the hills and mountains. According to these tales, they preserve the last secrets of the linear B script, the rituals of the old gods, and the locations of buried treasures and weapons lost to history. In the caves of Arcadia or the forests of Euboea, it is said these guardians watched as the world changed, waiting for a time when their wisdom would be needed again. Other stories, more speculative but tantalizing, suggest that the collapse of the Mycenaeans was not a uniquely Greek event, but part of a cascade that swept the entire Bronze Age world. Around the same time, the Hittite Empire fell. Cities in Canaan and Syria were burned, and even mighty Egypt was shaken to its foundations by mysterious invaders and upheaval. Were the Sea Peoples a roving horde, a coalition of displaced tribes, or something altogether stranger, a force of nature or fate sent to reset the balance of ancient power? Within this chaos, the Mycenaean refugees may have wandered far. Some oral traditions claim that groups of exiles made their way across the seas, founding new settlements on the shores of Italy, Sicily, and beyond. In Etruria, Sardinia, and even as far as Iberia, archaeologists have found traces of Mycenaean pottery and trade goods, sparking debates about lost colonies and the diffusion of knowledge. Did these exiles carry not only their stories, but fragments of the old world? Art, weapons, even secret writings, to new lands, planting the seeds for future kingdoms? These theories, though controversial, have inspired bold expeditions and excavations. In the hills of central Italy, some scholars have traced the founding myths of cities like Rome and Lavinium back to Trojan and Mycenaean heroes. The legend of Aeneas, fleeing the burning city, guided by omens and the will of the gods, resonates with the pattern of survival and rebirth found across the ancient Mediterranean. Whether or not these links are literal, they reveal how the memory of Mycenae shaped the very idea of civilization's rebirth from ruin. But not all mysteries are so grand. In lonely tombs and ruined shrines, everyday objects whisper of lost worlds. A seal stone carved with forgotten symbols, a cup inscribed with a prayer to a vanished goddess, a bronze dagger whose edge is still sharp after 3,000 years. Each artifact is a message from the past, a clue to the daily struggles and beliefs of those who lived through collapse. Some of these objects, so say the old tales, are cursed, bringing misfortune to those who disturb them, as if the Mycenaean dead themselves guard the secrets of their age. Archaeologists, armed with ground-penetrating radar, infrared imaging, and other modern wonders, have begun to peel back the Earth's layers, revealing new levels of complexity. Beneath the Palace of Pylos, a team uncovered an untouched tomb, the so-called Griffin Warrior, filled with gold rings, weapons, and an intricately carved agate seal depicting a mythic battle. The artistry and wealth found within shocked the academic world, suggesting that even as chaos spread, some Mycenaean elites clung to their traditions, their wealth, and perhaps their sense of destiny. Elsewhere, in the burned ruins of Thebes, a shattered tablet records desperate prayers for deliverance from enemies and famine. In Tiryns, a collapsed wall hides the skeletons of defenders who died in the flames. In forgotten valleys and caves, hidden caches of weapons and jewelry suggest that some families tried to wait out the storm, hoping for a return to order that never came. Through all these discoveries, one question looms. Why did the Mycenaean world, with all its organization, artistry, and wealth, prove so vulnerable to collapse? Was it simply a matter of bad luck, an unlucky series of natural disasters, compounded by war and migration? Or was there a deeper flaw, a brittleness at the heart of the system, a dependence on palatial bureaucracy and elite control that could not survive the loss of central authority? Some modern theorists draw parallels between the Mycenaean world and later empires. Like Rome, the Mycenaeans built their power on conquest, tribute, and the control of resources. But, unlike Rome, they lacked the means to adapt when disaster struck. Without their palaces, their scribes, and their armies, the Mycenaeans lost not just their wealth, but their very way of life. Their collapse, then, is both a tragedy and a warning, a reminder that even the mightiest civilizations can fall to forces beyond their control. Yet, out of this darkness, something extraordinary emerged. In the centuries that followed, as Greece slowly recovered, the memory of the Mycenaeans became the foundation for a new kind of world, a world that would give rise to philosophy, democracy, theater, and science. The gods of Olympus, once worshipped in the great palaces, were reborn in the temples of Athens and Delphi. The heroes of Homer's epics became models for generations of warriors and leaders. The ruins of Mycenae and Tiryns were not forgotten. They became places of pilgrimage, inspiration, and awe. The Greek Dark Age, far from being a time of total loss, was an age of transformation. In the absence of kings and palaces, new forms of community arose. Local chieftains, assemblies, and councils replaced the centralized power of the old rulers. Trade routes reopened, often along new paths. The art of oral poetry flourished, preserving and embellishing the stories of the past. When writing returned, this time borrowed from the Phoenicians, it was used not for palace administration, but for recording epic poetry, law, and philosophy. In the myths that survived, the Mycenaean age became an unattainable golden era, a time when mortals and gods mingled, when heroes performed impossible deeds, and when the world was both more terrible and more wonderful than the present. The longing for lost greatness shaped Greek identity, fueling both ambition and humility. But the mysteries did not fade. For every question answered by archaeology, new enigmas arose. Why are there so many layers of destruction at Mycenaean sites? What caused the simultaneous collapse of so many Bronze Age cultures? Are the Linear B tablets that survived the fires only a fraction of a knowledge that was lost? Do hidden chambers, yet undiscovered, contain further secrets, maps, texts, or treasures that could rewrite our understanding of the past? In the 21st century, a new generation of explorers, scientists, and storytellers continues the search. DNA analysis of ancient bones reveals patterns of migration and kinship, hinting at the mixing of peoples before, during, and after the collapse. Isotopic studies of teeth and pottery trace the movement of goods and families across the Mediterranean. Satellite imagery uncovers lost roads, harbors, and settlements, suggesting that the Mycenaean world was even more interconnected than once believed. Alternate theories, once dismissed as fantasy, are re-examined in the light of new evidence. Some researchers speculate about catastrophic volcanic eruptions, tsunamis, or pandemics that could have swept away entire populations. Others look to the stars, wondering if astronomical events, comet strikes, solar anomalies, played a role in the chaos that engulfed the Bronze Age. Meanwhile, the myths endure. In the stones of Mycenae, visitors still imagine the footsteps of Agamemnon, Clytemnestra, and Orestes. In the dim corridors of Tiryns, the stories of Perseus and Heracles seem to linger in the air. On the plains where Troy once stood, the ghosts of Priam, Hector, and Helen are never far away. The last legacy of the Mycenaeans is not just their ruins or their gold, but the questions they left behind, the sense that history is always deeper, stranger, and more mysterious than we can ever fully know. Their world ended in fire and silence, but from that silence rose the voices of poets, the dreams of philosophers, and the enduring fascination of all who seek to understand the past. Perhaps that is the true gift of the Mycenaeans. Not answers, but the invitation to explore, to wonder, and to keep searching for the secrets that sleep beneath the earth. And so the cycle continues. The palaces crumble, but the stories remain. The gods change their names, but the longing for meaning endures. Each new discovery, a grave, a treasure, a line of ancient script, adds another thread to the tapestry, weaving together myth and memory, fact and fantasy. The Mycenaeans vanished, but they are never gone. In every epic told, in every mystery unearthed, their shadow stretches across the centuries, a reminder that even in loss, there's the possibility of rebirth, and that in the ruins of yesterday, we may yet find the keys to tomorrow.